All three of the Mississippi authors on our panel, Julie Whitehead, Steve Yates, and R.J. Lee, are published by Madville Press and affectionately call themselves the Madvillians. Or is it the Madvillains?
No. We're good people.
In their unique new books, the three have painted beautiful yet somewhat tortured portraits of fictional characters facing real-life disasters and modern-day dilemmas, stories that speak to life in between the headlines, and how human beings can discover strength not only within themselves but in their faith. Each author weaves their fascinating players into the peril of real-world events or life situations, putting them in conflict with each other, with themselves, or with the world around them, constantly testing their strengths and beliefs. The folks in these books are in many ways just ordinary people, forced to make quick, if not always wise, decisions. So let's get on with our panel as we invite you to learn about being mad with Madville Press. Julie Liddell Whitehead is an award-winning freelance writer who has covered disasters from 9/11 to Hurricane Katrina. Her subjects include mental health education, and mental health advocacy. Julie has a bachelor's degree in communication with journalism emphasis and a master's degree in English, both from Mississippi State University. In August 2021, she completed her MFA from Mississippi University for Women. Hurricane Baby is Julie's first book. If you'll welcome Julie. Born and reared in Springfield, Missouri, Steve Yates is the author of multiple novels, a Juniper Prize-winning collection of stories, and is a Knickerbocker Prize-winning author of a novella. His fiction has appeared in many anthologies such as The Literature of the Ozarks, Yonder Mountain, and Ozarks Anthology, These Storied Hills, and Best American Short Stories. Steve is also Associate Director and Marketing Director of University Press of Mississippi, and he's been working all morning, and is a founding member of the Mississippi Book Festival. So thank you, Steve, for that. And this is his book. Thank you. R.J. Lee hails from Natchez, Mississippi, and graduated from Sewanee, otherwise known as the University of the South, with a BA in English and creative writing. Now living in Oxford, Mississippi, R.J. lived in New Orleans for 30 years, at which time he worked in journalism, in advertising, and with the Tourism Commission. He follows in the mystery writing footsteps of his father, R. Keene Lee, who wrote fighter pilot and detective stories for Fiction House. Since 1992, R.J. has written and published 17 books, the most recent, The Majestic Leo Marble. Welcome, R.J. Lee. And if I might mention, my most recent book is Party Favors, which is set amid the opioid crisis and set on the Gulf Coast. And it's a book in which medical people are thrown into a quandary with a little murder thrown into the mix. Just have to work that in somehow. All right, our first question is for Julie Liddell Whitehead. 2005's Category 5 Hurricane Katrina, which caused 1,392 fatalities and damages estimated at $186.3 billion along the Mississippi Gulf Coast and New Orleans, is at the center of your Hurricane Baby, a novel-length collection of 4 separate stories released on the 19th anniversary of one of the worst tropical cyclones and hurricanes in history. Julie, when we think about storm victims, we may think about the tragedy of physical lives lost, or at least I did until I read your book. But Hurricane Baby details the emotional details of lives disrupted, how the living are left to deal with personal, mental anguish in the aftermath of weather's destruction. Your characters suffer lost love, the consequences of the in the heat of the moment adultery, and an overwhelming loss of trust in humanity. Can you expound on why you wanted to define these consequences of this weather, and which may be the most important aspects of those consequences included in your stories?
Wow, big question. Okay. I wanted to do exactly what you said. I started writing this within a couple of days after Katrina. I was watching the news. I was a freelance writer at the time, trying to work from home when nobody had power, and I had 3 kids underfoot, and my husband was working. So I was watching the news and I kept thinking, you heard a lot about people who lost everything, just right off the bat, or, we lost everybody but the dog. But we got the dog and we're okay, that kind of thing. And I wondered when are we going to hear from the people that didn't necessarily lose their home, but they lost their mind over this, because that's where I was. And so it was just an idea of coming up with what are some situations where somebody would have a serious impact from enduring the hurricane that may not be obvious to others. And so that's what each storyline in this book is about. Darden mentioned a couple of them. One is a couple that gets thrown together in a hurricane evacuation situation, and as he said, they have an impulsive encounter that results in one of the characters, Wendy, getting pregnant. And they're not sure exactly whose baby it is. The second one is Tommy Hebert, who went and did search and rescue after Katrina, even though that's not his business, not his job. He was helping his neighbors, and ran into a situation that totally traumatized him and drove him to drink, and the consequences of that decision. The third one is the Mike, who worked in an ER in Liddell and lost a patient who all that was wrong with him was heat exhaustion, and they never got around to him until he had already died sitting in the ER waiting for help. And the last story is James and Lori King. James King comes back to Kenner, Louisiana finds out that his best friend and neighbor has been shot while trying to keep people from looting his house. And his wife also suffers a miscarriage. So that was where I was just finding people that weren't being talked about.
Well, did your previous nonfiction writings in mental health and mental health advocacy help you in that character and plot development?
A lot of it did. A lot of it was just listening to people talk. I mean, if you remember, if you were in Mississippi during Katrina, everybody had a Katrina story, and it was probably 6 months before we stopped talking about it. All the time, every time, every time you got together at church, every time you got together for dinner, you talked about what happened in Katrina, the newest story you'd heard. And so a lot of it was just kind of absorbing all those details and spitting them out.
I know when I was reading the book, I kept thinking about our own experience in Katrina, and all we did was lose electricity in Jackson for 3 weeks. But I remember standing at the window in our bedroom watching the trees do 180-degree angles, and fortunately no tree flew and hit me in the face, but it did bring back a lot of memories. My first book also came out right after Katrina too, so a lot of things. Steve Yates, while band music plays heavily in connecting your main characters, including Tyndall, Casey, Devon, and Patrick, in the lakes of Southern Hollow, you introduce drug abuse early in the novel. In fact, in the very first pages, when a doctor out for a jog finds a body in the bushes. How important were the themes of drug abuse and rock music used as tools to weave your characters together?
I was as worried about what drug use was doing to music as I was worried about what drug abuse and addiction were doing to the Ozarks. I don't think that the Ozarks were necessarily worse than any other rural area, but the opioid crisis, and then to really ice it off, the fentanyl crisis, hit extremely hard in the Ozarks, and there are not a lot of outlets. There was just no way for there to be mental health infrastructure there in Springfield to help that many people. We struggle with the people who are suffering from mental health that's not related to drug use. And so this crisis was robbing young people of their lives and their dreams. it just seemed it just seemed very natural to have a super talented musician who had so much potential, and then, as we know from addiction, you don't know if you're that person who the first time you're exposed to an opioid, it changes everything. It makes all of those, there's no more nervousness, there's nothing, you're sort of in a nirvana when it first hits, and she's one. So it just seemed really natural for her to run into that. She injures herself in a fight. She gets in a fight with her bandmate, and it's not, it's a brother and sister kind of fight, but she breaks her foot. The doctor, and this happened quite a lot in the Ozarks, doctor's first impulse is to say, okay, well, you broke your foot, here's a boot, put the boot on and start taking this opioid, we'll get you to surgery eventually. And as soon as she takes that, she's one of those very unlucky few.
You also use personal loss of family as a method to show the reader how some of your main characters are connected. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The three kids have each lost somebody very recently. Tyndall has lost her brother to opioid addiction too. Casey is a line of duty death survivor. Her dad was a cop, and tweakers had killed him when she was 11 or 12, and so here she is, a 17-year-old, but she still remembers her dad very well. And Devin has lost his mom to cancer. So these three kids who are living in this suburban neighborhood in Springfield, Missouri, they've all got this they've all got this kind of bind of mourning. They've mourned together, and they've helped each other through this.
Thank you. And the book is very entertaining. He's hit on some really hard subjects, but it really is entertaining. So, and again, I enjoyed it as much as Julie's. And RJ, I enjoyed your book too. Believe it or not, I did read all three books over the Labor Day weekend. It was a good time to catch up on some reading. R.J. Lee, your novel, The Majestic Leo Marble, is set against society's changing recognition and acceptance of homosexuality as your protagonist comes of age in the mid to late 60s, learning that he is not attracted to the opposite sex while the AIDS crisis looms on the horizon. As a young teenager, Leo Marble is confused about how to deal with his sexual preference and spends a great deal of time and energy denying who he is. No spoilers here, but Leo finally pushes ahead to find success in life and love, a feat not easily won for anybody. RJ, you define this work as autofiction, and I think that all of us who dream up fictional characters tend to work bits and pieces of ourselves into all of them, but you have said that Leo Marble is a reimagined version of yourself. In considering your new work as a self-described piece of autofiction and your protagonist, Leo Marble, who also attended Sewanee, worked as a writer in New Orleans, and became a gay rights advocate, did you consider writing a memoir rather than doing a fictional treatment, and why not?
No, I never did, because when you do an autobiography or a memoir, invariably it's from first person, I. And I is very, very difficult to get out of. You don't have the crafts that you have in third person. Not only that, but Leo is reimagined. He is me and he is not me. So I wanted to have a third person viewpoint, which enables you to go anywhere in the universe in which he lives. And I also wanted to have the freedom to invent new characters and new situations, and actually make certain characters that were real better than they were, because some of them drove me crazy. And I said, well, you know what, I can fix that, and she'll be much better that way. and some of these were family members, and so I felt like I needed to treat my family well, and they would approve, whether they were living or dead, of the treatment that I gave them. And so autofiction is the best of all possible worlds, because, as Darden said, every writer draws upon his or her own experience. It's impossible not to imbue that in your writing. In this case, I wanted the best of all possible worlds, and so no, I never considered I am Leo as an opener. Instead, it was Leo Marble was quickened in the womb of his mother in April of 1945 or 1946, which I did, actually.
So in many ways, it was sort of like a second chance to maybe do things
yes.
over. Yeah, yeah.
The universe gives us all many chances. We just have to be open to them.
That's true. Some people talk about the term writing in your own voice, RJ. How does that differ from model fiction?
Well, there is an element in the book from a Kirkus reviewer who was smart enough to recognize it. He said the book has a touch of magical realism. Do you all know what magical realism is? It's the idea that the universe gives us certain signs, symbols. Some people would say, well, that's religion, but you don't have to be hidebound about it. The universe can give us some themes, like a good symphony. Strains keep occurring, themes, people keep coming up to you that you think you know. You may have known them. I'm kind of getting where I'm going here, in that I think the universe gives you many chances. And so Leo struggles with this particular chance he's involved in. And it's pretty daunting because he's surrounded by queer jokes, and he overhears his parents at one point saying he can't be our son and not be interested in girls. So he spends his entire high school career faux dating girls to prove that he likes girls and that he fits in. And then it leads to a very interesting quandary for him, and he becomes the school heartthrob by getting the lead in the musical version of Carousel. And all the girls want to date him because they think he's Billy Bigelow, the abusive heterosexual barker. And Leo was far from that. He gets into trouble. He gets all these phone calls. Two girls stage a flat tire in front of his driveway and knock on the door and say, can you come fix this? In parentheses, you big, strong man, And Leo, just as I, didn't know how to fix a flat. I called the tow truck.
That's AAA, yeah.
And I said, come tow this flat tire to the car, to the dealership so they can buy a new tire. So I got myself in trouble by being inauthentic. Now, I didn't become authentic until I was 26 years old, when I first came out to my parents. And that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. Because, let me say this, parents are not prepared to hear that their son or daughter is gay. I don't care who you are. You may be the most progressive person in the world. They want you to get married, be happy, have children, give them grandchildren, which is what they know. However, everybody's journey is different. We're all coming to the universe with a different story, and it's just as valid as anybody else's. We're all entitled to be who we are authentically.
Thank you. And I think you've written your story from both the heart and your imagination.
Yes, I have.
Julie, recently I had the honor to attend what I understand was the official worldwide release of your Hurricane Baby, your first book at Lemuria Bookstore in Jackson. In that talk, you explained then that you set out to write one story, but decided to write 4 parallel stories instead. What led you to structure your book in that way?
Well, it was a way to completely reconceive the entire work, which needed to be done. It didn't work as a single storyline. And so I thought, I had published 2 of the stories as single short stories in a defunct publication called Madville Press. And that's what led me to think, well, maybe these aren't novel chapters, maybe these are all short stories. And I started pulling the entire work apart and thought, I had already invented the character of Tommy Hebert to go into Holding On, which is a story in this book. It was published in that, and I had to change it up so much because if I published it the way I written it first, it wouldn't have made any sense. So then I'd change up the details so much it made it a different story. And so I thought, maybe I need to do a lot of that. And that all came down about January 2022 is when I started that project.
Well, you would have had to have found a common thread to pull all of those different stories together other than just Hurricane Katrina, because there's some of the stories are set, or they're set in different towns or different places along the coast. So that would have been very, very, very challenging. I did find and appreciated the fact that in each one of the 4 stories, they were different enough. They were not like an ABC cookie cutter construction. They were all, almost like little tiny novellas, and that each one, you didn't know where they were where it was going. There were twists, more twists in some stories than others. And so I thought that was really very masterful that you could do that. And I think if you had tried to weave it all together, it would have been, you probably would still be working on it.
Yeah, that would have been a chore.
Yeah, right.
Can I say something about her book? Because I was very privileged to review it for the Clarion Ledger. And I told Julie, and I told the readers out there that she creates suspense in that way. Instead of having one story started and completed, then you have to start all over with a whole bunch of new characters. So instead what she does is she kind of leaves you maybe at the edge of a cliff, and then you say, oh, I can't wait to get to that, and then she has an equally compelling story that she starts. And you have all these little cliffhangers that just build like this. I found it very effective, and I had never tried anything like that before. So congratulations to you.
Yeah, really.
I appreciate that, 'cause that was planned. So I did plan that. I thought, we need a starting incident, we need an inciting incident, we need a rush to the climax, and we need a cliffhanger. So every story has that inciting incident, rush to the climax, cliffhanger ending.
It works.
And we really should say a big hooray and thank you to Madville Publishing and Kim Davis, because it's really hard to publish a collection of short stories, connected or not. It's really, really hard. And that's so awesome that she took this and made this happen. Right?
Exactly.
Took a big chance and made it happen.
Julie, what was your favorite story of the 4?
Ooh, my favorite. The one that interested me most, as far as subject matter, was Wendy and Ray and Judd.
That's
the
mine,
first
too.
Storyline. Because that was such a tricky, complicated moment. And it was the trickiest to try to extricate her from, that she'd gotten herself into this, and how she reacted to it needed to be true to her character, and how she lived with that truth had to be true to her character, and how it was uncovered had to be true to all the characters. And so that was the one that I think was my favorite to work on from that standpoint of it being a very interesting, intricate pulling apart. So I think that I would say that was it.
And of course, she's talking about the hurricane baby. I guess you figured that out.
Yeah.
Steve, when the reader learns your bio, he or she begins to understand why this story of universal themes such as addiction, struggling for fame, and sexual longing and experimentation is set in the Ozarks. Like your characters, you are from Springfield, Missouri, and attended Glendale High School. However, with a little tweaking, could your novel have been set anywhere, such as right here in Mississippi? And how crucial was the setting to your novel?
I think the setting to the novel was crucial to finishing the novel.
Okay.
Because I work 50 hours a week at a university press. I've got plenty to do every day. We publish 90 new books each year. And there is nothing that will happen to better my life if I publish a novel. I won't get more money, I won't get a raise, I won't get tenure. Nothing special happens. So this is an activity that I do by waking up at 3 in the morning and writing until about 5 or 6. And then, I have to go exercise and do other things that keep me alive. And there's breakfast too, which keeps me alive. So whatever I'm going to write, it really better keep me going. I better be stuck to the chair, stuck to the laptop, and going at it. And I think a kind of nostalgia for the Ozarks that didn't damage the book, but that was flooding me, may help me finish this. I've crossed that threshold where I've lived longer in Mississippi, in Flowood, Mississippi, than I did in Springfield, Missouri, growing up. And that I knew it would be weird when it happened, and it was. You begin to wonder about, well, where is home, what is home, and things like that. So setting it in the Ozarks, setting it in Glendale, remembering old stomps and crazy things we used to do in bands, it really made sure that I got the darn thing done.
Well, how important, of course, you were drawing on some of your own background and experiences, but how important is research in fiction?
Well, everything that I wrote before this, it was really important. In this, the research was really different because I had to do, I guess let's call it live research. Rather than archival research, which is what I did for the historical novels that I wrote, here I would say to a friend who I'd gone to high school with, okay, I know you're still in bands, you're still playing. What's that like? What do you have to do? What do you have to navigate when you've got people that, they've got jobs and families? How do you make a band work? And then one of them that I'd interviewed a couple of times, he told me he was going to go into the studio on Sunday night and do a whole bunch of recording. No band I was ever in made it out of the garage, right? And thank goodness we never did. We would have been just terrible. But to see a studio, you had to do live research, So I said, well, Andy, would you let me go hang out in the studio while you did all this recording work? Wow, that was intricate and cool. And I got to be a fly on the wall while he did all this complicated studio stuff in really the best studio in the Ozarks, if not in Missouri. It's a great studio called Studio 2100 in Springfield. So live research rather than archival research. Same thing for the opioid crisis. I'd read a stack of books that have come out about the opioid crisis, but none of them touched the Ozarks. And I went to high school with someone who is now a counselor, and Miranda had time to sit down with me and talk about, well, what's really happening on the streets of Springfield? What's really happening with the people that you're helping?
RJ.
Yep.
This is sort of a follow-up question to an earlier discussion. After a decades-long successful career of crafting small-town humorous fiction and cozy mysteries, you have switched to an absorbing novel of autofiction with an LGBTQ plus theme. Was there a life-changing moment or series of events for you, which you can share, that led to this sort of change in genre?
Yes, there was. When I was growing up I call it Beaupre, Mississippi, but it's thinly disguised version of Natchez. And there is an area of Natchez called Beaupre. I grew up in the closet. I didn't come out until I was 26 in New Orleans. I joined a Gay Resources Coalition. We marched in the streets when Anita Bryant showed up for Summer Pops after she had defeated the Miami-Dade County ordinance, discrimination ordinance against gay teachers. And I was very proud that I did all that. As life unfolded for me, I finally fell in love with someone. Will and I had 13 years together. We got legally married. We had to go to Maine because it wasn't legal in Mississippi. And I lost Will 7 years ago to cancer. And I decided that at some point I needed to talk about more of who I was. And there are a lot of people who are still not sure they belong in the universe. There are messages out there that say, no, you shouldn't exist, or you're a sinner by definition. I firmly reject that, but I decided I needed to do something, not just complain. And I decided, with the good counsel of my grief counselor, after I lost Will, I started going to a grief counselor, and she said, you're a writer, you need to keep writing. And after COVID actually inconveniently destroyed my book tours for my mystery series, I decided this is the perfect time to take a chance. And Kim Davis with Madville Press publishes poetry, literary fiction. She's a serious publisher and editor. And I had met her before at a literary convention, and I said, well, I'll try her. And of course, here are two other people who tried her too. But there's a message that needs to be told to today, particularly in today's cultural climate. Not only were gay teachers under attack in the late 70s from Anita Bryant, they're still under attack. We're still having this kind of discourse in states like Florida about curriculum and what teachers should be able to teach. And I don't want to get terribly political, but I think this is the time I needed to speak out and speak up and say, this is who I am. You don't have to like me, but this is who I am, and there are a lot of people like me. So we have a lot to offer the universe. That was my reason.
Well, thank you. You put it together very well.
Thank you.
I do want to go back to, you talked a little bit about coming out to your parents, but I did want to talk a little bit more about the scene in which Leo first comes out to his mother. I thought that was handled very gently, and I actually have the actual quote in here if you can't remember it. Can you share that with us in the scene in which Leo is trying to come out to his mother, and how it really went over in the book with his fictional mom and dad?
Well, I actually came out to my father. And I don't know why I did that. Well, yeah, I do. Because I had overheard my mother, when I was in high school, saying to my father, it was through a louver door, he can't be our son and not be interested in girls. That statement really is, he can't be our son, period. Because I wasn't interested in girls. That just appeared when I was 6 years old. 6. And I got turned on by Charles Atlas ads on the back of comic books. That's how I knew. Nobody did anything to me. Nobody told me to do anything. Nobody said anything to me. It's the same as when girls get crushes on boys, boys get crushes on girls. It appears when it's supposed to. And all of us have gone through the heartbreak of crushes. It's just more difficult if your crush is on a member of the same sex. There's no backup. Like, what do I do? To get back to coming out to my father, he took it well, and then he took it upon himself to tell my mother. I heard secondhand from him, not her. She cried. And later I asked her, why did you cry? And she said, because I always thought you would make such a good father. And I said, well, I never have said anything about that. Some people are not meant to reproduce. That's not really why we're here. We're here to love and learn and grow, and whether you reproduce is incidental. But she said, well, she actually broke down and confessed, I wanted grandchildren. Mm-hmm. My brother, brought up by the same parents, was always straight. She did get grandchildren through him. My brother and I were very close. And so we are who we are. I'm sorry that my mother saw it that way. And I think today still, as I said before, there are parents that are just not ready to hear that. They don't know what to do with it. What usually comes out of it is, what did we do wrong? You didn't do anything wrong. You just reproduced. And you produce someone who might be athletic or gifted in music or scientifically or left-brained or right-brained in the genetic little puzzle, put that person together. You brought them into the world. So that's my take on that, and that's what my mother did. We were still friends, as I was with my father, but I'm sorry that they had that kind of heartbreak.
Well, in the novel, and I'd like to just describe exactly how Leo did it in the novel. He was in a school play, and he was infatuated with a great-looking older male actor. And he went to his mother and said, this is to quote from your novel, and she tells him, or he tells her, I think I'm attracted to, I've forgotten now the name of the character, but the older male not actor, and she says, just concentrate on your lines, don't worry about the rest, it'll all work out. And I thought that's just such a classic thing about life. Just concentrate on what you're supposed to do, your lines, it's going to all be okay. Then she says, you'll see. And then when Leo's mother tells the father, sort of the reverse here, then Leo's father responds later to an update from the mother, and he says, it's just a phase. Leo can be so dramatic.
Yes.
Anyway, I just thought that
I am
was
dramatic.
perfect. Let's take advantage of this huge writing experience in this panel and talk a little bit about the writing craft itself, particularly backstory and character development. I'm hoping to learn a little bit here. Steve, let's start with you. Backstory can be a challenge to a fiction writer and likely to an author of nonfiction as well. Editor Brenda Copeland defines backstory as pivotal moments in a character's past that make them into what they are today. Steve, I noticed that you show how backstory can be subtly inserted within character descriptions, such as in describing bad boy Patrick Turin, another character describes him as an eye roll every minute. Another character calls Turin a vampire cowboy. So those descriptions just immediately gave me a thought process about what they were like and what they had been through. Devin says about girlfriend Tyndall, she's like a machine that has abruptly powered down. I mean, that just told me where she was coming from. Do you employ other techniques to work in backstory, and what's your take on its importance to the front story?
It can be dangerous because if the backstory is really, really good and you write a great big long flashback, your novel, which was going forward in this way, just went this way,
Right.
backwards. A crazy thing about this book, I've never done this before, I wrote it in present tense. At MFA school, you're not supposed to do that. They tell you not to do that. But I started it that way, and it just felt better and better. But what that does with backstory is that it allows you to tell a little bit of backstory, and all you have to do is shift to the past tense. And you don't have to insert the helper verbs have or had. It's sleight of hand. It's crazy.
It is.
I never, I'd never run into it. I hadn't read a present tense novel, and it was great fun. So then what I had to do was make sure that I didn't do it for great long stretches. The novel needs to go forward. Bill Harrison, who was one of my teachers at Arkansas, who wrote Mountains of the Moon and Rollerball and things like that, forward was the way we go. We go always forward, block that metaphor, go. And so you've got to do it very, very quickly. And so you try little things like, remember, there's a scene where Devin is eating breakfast over at Casey's house, and he looks up and he sees a picture of the late dad, the father who had died, the cop, and he's hugging Brett Hull. Since we don't follow ice hockey here in Mississippi, Brett Hull, is a famous St. Louis hockey player. And Devin, it hits him that, wow, Casey's dad didn't get to live long enough to see St. Louis win the Stanley Cup. Little things like that, just quickly do it and let the plot do what it should do.
You have to a moment of action in a plot has to have been earned. And if it's not earned, you have to put a little backstory in there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had one little thing to say. When I started asking my father, who was a writer and editor in New York, of pulp fiction, when I started writing, I sought his advice, and on the subject of backstory, what he said was, you should know 10 times the amount of information about all your characters than you choose to reveal.
Mm-hmm. Right, that's true. We're going to come back a little bit if we have time to talk some more about the writing craft. But Julie, I do want to ask you a question. There are many references to alcohol and religion in Hurricane Baby, tools used by your characters to deal with Hurricane Katrina and its aftermath. In multiple scenes, characters alternate between reliance on Jesus or religion in general and alcohol. So without any spoilers here, who wins, Jesus or alcohol?
Wow. Well, it depends on which story you're reading.
Well, that's true.
Well, you
That's true.
I tell people about the endings of these stories, that one is an unalloyed good ending, one is the best that can be done ending, one is an unalloyed bad ending, and one is you have no idea what's going to happen ending. So that's the way I came out with that. But as to faith, I think Mike's story carries that forward the most because he takes his faith very seriously. The other characters maybe don't, but he takes his faith very seriously. And he really has, his argument is with God. Why did a good God let this happen? And he doesn't exactly find a solution to the question, but he finds a peace about it in another parallel incident at the end of the book. And it's just the idea that we're all looking for something to lean on, something to help us cope. And some of us cope with this, that, or the other thing. And to my mind, the best way to cope is reliance on God. But that's just to my mind. Other people think differently, and I tried to represent that in the book.
And I think you do that very well. You know, one character, Judd, drowns his sorrows. He buys 2 bottles of bourbon. I think he drank only one of them. But he drinks the whole bottle of bourbon at the same time he's asking Jesus to help him. So I thought that was very good. Not good, but it was very interesting.
There are a lot of alcoholic Christians in this book.
That's right.
Julie said there's 7 minutes.
7 minutes left. Okay.
Sarah did. 20 minutes.
20 minutes,
I thought you
okay.
said 7.
I really have some really great questions, though. We're going to got to ask them, okay? And if we have some time, we will ask the questions from the audience. I do have one little quick question for you, Julie. There's a scene in which a character is at the grocery store and she sees a little old lady who can't pay the grocery bill. This is back in the 60s, or I'm sorry, back in the time when a small town would have you run a tab at the grocery store.
Well, it's still after
It's still that way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, after Katrina.
In this town, it's still after Katrina.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So anyway, she doesn't have enough money to buy her own children a good supper. So when she gets home, they have a very cheap supper. And she literally, and this I was thinking about, drawing upon your own personal experiences and things. She literally washes her child's mouth out with soap. And you describe it very well. Have you ever had your mouth washed out with soap? No. Okay.
I have.
Threatened.
Okay. I just wanted to get that clear.
I have a very good imagination.
You did great. Let's see. RJ, quick question for you. Someone with a long writing career understands that there are many reasons readers choose a book to read. Maybe it's its cover, a review read online or in the newspaper, or from something heard at Bridge Club or around the water cooler at work. Perhaps even more important is keeping the reader hooked until the end. How important is a diverse cast of characters and settings important to accomplish that? And after reading the Majestic Leo Marble, I believe I know the answer.
Well, yeah, the cast of characters is extremely diverse. Obviously, I've got gay characters, but not just gay characters. I have male and female gay characters. I have black and white gay characters. I have an Hispanic gay character. I have a Kenyan gay character. I have, of course, straight characters, and I have people that are on the other side of the fence who are anti-gay and so forth. But the main thrust of the novel is with a diverse cast of characters, which is what the world is. And sometimes these people don't agree with each other, and they have all kinds of different experiences. I think maybe the most interesting character I created, it's a very minor character, and I don't give her much to say, but what I do give her to say is very important. When I first started coming out, I met a lot of people in New Orleans, a variety of gay people, and the most interesting person that I ever met was a black lesbian. And we had a conversation, and she said, there's a pecking order in this world, and don't get upset that I'm telling you this, but you have the white straight male, you have the white straight female, you have the white gay male, you have the white gay female, you have the black gay male, and at the very, 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 very bottom is the black gay female. She is disrespected because she is black, she's a woman, and she's gay. So she has all of the different burdens that are put on people for all the wrong reasons, instead of just being who they are. So I wanted to mix a lot of characters, including a number of gay characters. There's a stockbroker in there. There's a food broker in there. There's a secretary in there. There is, yes, a hairdresser in there. There's also a costume designer in there. There's just a variety of people in there. And so I wanted to present a cornucopia of gay people just as I would have done if this had been a straight novel. I would have wanted to have had different types of people in conflict. Good fiction always has good conflict. So did that answer your question?
Yes, you exactly. You must have read the script. So.
I must have read my novel.
Steve, and you have very characters as well in your novel, but one of your main characters, Tyndall, is described as a neurodivergent, autistic, or neurocomplex. Yet she's also a tall, beautiful bombshell pre-med student. She defines her new psychiatrist or therapist as a snake advancing toward her. You include your nephew, Will Plunkett IV, in the novel's dedication in reference to his introduction to you of Tyndall, your neurodivergent character. Did that in some way draw you to explore this autism spectrum as a major player in character development of your novel?
It did. Will was born on my birthday, and he is neurodiverse, and his mother, my sister Julie, was exceptional at intervening in his life. Early intervention is so important for someone who is on the autism spectrum. And the other thing that happened with Will was that as he matured, he became absolutely spectacularly good looking. I mean, he was just smashing. He was tall, he had a great musculature, beautiful blue eyes, lovely long blonde hair, and I just knew this was happening. You know, I didn't talk with him about it, I talked a little with Julie about it, but constantly young women would have a crush on him. They would just fall for him, you know, and they'd start to flirt with him and then suddenly realize, hey, something is different here. This is not going the way I expected it to go. So the struggles that he's gone through just really inspired me to try to write a character like that. This character happened to be a woman, so, you know, the way we create is just weird. we take the inspiration and go.
I'm going to like to, you all may want to comment on this, but this is more of a back to a craft question. Genre fiction is defined as either mystery, thriller, or suspense themes where plot drives the story, where literary fiction is more about character development or technique where setting drives the story. At least that's the way I understand it. Mm-hmm. Then book club fiction or upmarket fiction is somewhere in between. Thinking about your goals in your novels, whether it be Hurricane Baby, the Majestic Leo Marble, or the Lakes of Southern Hollow, were you looking to write, what type of fiction were you trying to write? Was it literary, was it genre, or was it upmarket, somewhere in between?
Mine was definitely a goal, literary fiction, but also to reach LGBTQ people of all sorts. Young, students, middle-aged, those who had, well, lavender marriages. Do you all know what a lavender marriage is? It's a marriage of convenience. I have a character in here who gets married to cover everything up, and his wife doesn't know. That's really hard to believe, but, you know, that happens. And he actually resolves things too. But yes, I wanted to reach a certain audience, and I also wanted to do it in a literary manner. The other 16 novels I wrote, I would say, are more commercial fiction, in that they're cozy small town fiction, cozy mysteries. It's like somebody gets killed and somebody has to solve the mystery. So no, that was my goal, definitely. And I am just at the beginning of this book tour and can't wait to get out there and talk to some of the LGBTQ plus groups at various universities, and I've already nailed some of those down.
Steve, yeah.
I wanted to write a novel that I would finish writing.
Okay. Someone told me, I had an editor tell me, the way you do that, you get a big bag of Lay's potato chips. If it takes that, and I keep a big box of gumballs, bubble gum, and I'll chew 5 or 6 at a setting. So anyway,
You remember when Slim Fast came out?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, Alan Gerganis, when he came to Arkansas, advised me that what I needed was a case of Slim Fast. Just pull yourself up in a room, drink nothing but that, and finish your book.
Oh, wow.
Julie, would you like to comment about what your goal was? Literary, commercial, or somewhere in between?
I didn't think it was very commercial at all, because there's a romance, quote unquote, subplot, but not really a romance subplot. There's addressing societal problems, but not resolving them, maybe in a way that the advocates would have you resolve them. There's a lot that goes on in Hurricane Baby, and I didn't know what to do with it when I finished it. Literally. I mean, it went from being a novel to being a short story collection, but I really don't know how to classify it.
Well, someone said, as you're answering your question, I've decided that it's book club or upmarket.
Okay.
And someone defined that it's a lover of book club or upmarket fiction is someone who spends their weekends on the couch at the independent bookstore reading, or down at the cafe or connected to it. If you think about that, that kind of goes along with that. The commercial genre fiction person is, got to go to work, and the literary is just going to sit there and drink wine and just talk about it. So we have 5 minutes left, and I'm sure there are many of you out there that just have some questions you have to ask. And we'd like to recognize anyone that would like to ask a question. Anyone on the panel? Yes, you in the front.
Thank you. I haven't heard autofiction before. I'm a writing student in the graduate program at the W. And it's a new word for me, and I'm happy to have heard it brought up today. That's something that you just finished talking about, like what you thought your novels would be, or how you would, what was the point, or where you wanted to be. So is this a new genre, or something that is, in a literary sense, it's, take yourself out of it, but write what you know?
Autofiction is something that I'd say scholars applied to a whole set of American literature going all the way back to Herman Melville's White Jacket. If you grab White Jacket and read it, it reads just like a novel, but Melville was writing about his own experience in the nascent U.S. Navy. And it's one of the best damn sailing books you're ever going to read. It's just incredible. But those who've studied it go back and say, well, you know, he did most of this. You know, this stuff happened to him just about this way. And then, of course, since he was just, a yeoman sailor, he wasn't, an admiral or something like that. There's not a lot of written record. He had the liberty to say, as RJ did, this guy was really rotten, and he didn't have to be rotten in this book. I might just improve him
Fix
a little.
him up a little bit.
And this guy over here, he was just worthless. I'm going to take him down for once. So it hews very closely to lived reality that the writer experienced. But it's been around as long as Melville. Mark Twain, Roughing It, that whole thing is autofiction.
I've experienced it as a reader, but I've never heard it called that. In academia, it's autobiography or fiction or nonfiction, and it's great.
Yeah.
I write a lot of this way because and those are things. If you're a writer that writes what you know, isn't that part of it? And a little twinkle is that you can use the fiction to soften the blow of the community that lives around you.
That's right.
And you're doing it anyway. If you're writing good fiction, right? If you wrote your whole life out, oh, good grief, right? No way. So you're doing it anyway. You're compressing. You're making things happen faster, slower, more beautifully. Whatever you're doing, you're already writing autofiction.
Thank you.
Did you say that you were from the W?
I just started as a graduate student.
Okay, well, on October 16th, I'll be there with Pip Gordon. We're going to do a two-man panel on that.
Oh, what's the date again?
October 16th, I think at 5:30 at the W.
And you also, Mr. Yates, are coming for the symposium?
Oh yeah.
So I'm here to
Brilliant.
meet you, but I end up.
We're just all over the place.
Welcome to the Mississippi Book Festival. That's what we do.
We're the Madvillians. Get to know us.
Good. Well, I'll come down for the signing part and maybe
Great.
have a longer chat.
Good.
Thank you.
John? That John?
Is there a difference between autofiction and a memoir, or is there an intersection between them, or they just run parallel to each other?
Did everybody hear the question? Is there a difference between a memoir and autofiction? I think that as you've seen memoir writers get into real hot water when they make up a bunch of stuff. Remember the guy who did, what was it, 1 Million Little Pieces about addiction and was on Oprah, and then suddenly everybody finds out, you know what, you weren't really as good an addict as you said you are in this book. So the memoir may use compression, but it's telling what you really believe your story to be. And if you would start making autofiction of it, then you've done kind of what that guy who did 1 Million Little, was it called 1 Million Little Pieces?
I think so.
Something like that, a million little somethings.
Yeah, and my father once said that the difference between a memoir and fiction is that a memoir, most of the time, is information, whereas fiction is imagination, and there is a difference. So,
And the difference between a memoir and an autobiography usually is that memoir is focused on one time in your life, said to get one message across about that time in your life and how it changed you. Autobiography is just, he did this,
The whole
he did
thing.
this, he did this, he did this, he did this.
Well said, right.
Yeah, the big difference about memoir is the character of that person needs to have changed by the end of the story. We do have to bring it to a close. I do want to remind you that at 3 p.m., all of us will be at the signing tent signing our books. I think anyone who's spoken at 1:30 will be there. I'm sure the line will be longest for us. So get there quick and early and get in line first. And I do want to thank all three of you for being here and letting me be involved and be able to moderate you. It's been quite an honor. John?
I'll make one statement, Steve Yates, you and I know, Springfield, Missouri, I've been there, is the birthplace of Bass Pro.
It is
that
indeed.
right?
And O'Reilly Automotive, right? That happened there. And where did Sam open his first Sam's Club? Springfield, Missouri.
There we go.
Let's give everybody a round of applause.
Thank you, Darden. Enjoyed it.